Recently, this tweet thread blew up on Twitter of mangaka Shirahama Kanome, sorry for my pronunciation, creator of Witch Hat Atelier drawing. And I was looking at the quote retweets and replies, and I saw a lot of people talking about how she is able to draw like this. So seeing as I am also a lover of hatching and cross hatching, and I do draw often with the pen myself, I thought I would give my input on what I think makes their art so clean and consistent, and what both you and I could learn from her, because I am definitely not as good as her. I have broken her techniques down into some tips you can take home and involve in your drawing / practice routines, and the technique she uses the most, called ghosting, which we will get to later. Starting with the most basic stuff. Staying in your ideal range of motion. If we watch back her footage, you will notice a few things. She is constantly adjusting the paper to get more ideal angles. That's number one. 2, notice the range of motion she uses. The motion is mainly in the fingers and following the arc of the wrist. Many art teachers tell you to draw with your shoulder, and while that is great advice that Shirahama does utilize, for the most part her pivot points are at the wrist and elbow. This is due to the scale that she draws in. Most mangaka that don't draw digitally traditionally draw on B4 size paper, which is 9.8 by 13.9 inches, which sounds big, but when you realize the character art does not often take up even 60% of the page, often it's really not a lot of room to utilize the shoulder, which is why many mangaka develop really good wrist and finger control over time. 3, she doesn't force long lines. In a medium like ink on paper, mistakes are hard to fix. Taking the risk of going for a really long, clean line is not something even experienced artists are likely to do when there are deadlines to meet. So you'll see her do a lot of drawing a line. She finishes her comfortable range of motion, she puts a dot at the end, and then readjusts her pivot and continues. Over and over and over again. Now I hear what you're saying, but isn't that an aesthetic choice? Yes and no. Art styles are informed by art techniques and vice versa, so it's really a chicken or the egg type question. Either way, she is doing this and you should too. Regardless, you should preemptively set your pivot point based on the line you are going to draw, mainly how long it will be. Having to change your pivot point midway through drawing a line is an easy way to mess something up. I want to note that most people intuitively do this in a lot of the things we've talked about, but if you're struggling, it might be worth paying attention to so that you can improve your own lines. Now that I've gotten the broader, more physical stuff out of the way, let's get to the juicy stuff. The art technique that she uses for almost every other line. Although I will say, not as much as newer artists should. Ghosting. If you've ever watched basketball, you've seen something similar. Pretending to shoot without the ball to get a feel for the motion and form. Similarly, ghosting is when you hover the pen just above the paper and repeat the motion of the line you want to draw. Then, without stopping the motion, you simply press down and commit to the line. This has a couple benefits. First, you basically get to draw the line without actually drawing it, so it improves the chances of getting good lines. Secondly, and I think this is an underrated aspect of ghosting, is that it greatly sets your rhythm, which is very important for hatching, which Shirahama is very good at, partly due to this. Good rhythm helps a lot with consistency. Okay, now that I've explained some art techniques, let's go over some footage that I will live review where I will point out where and when she uses the techniques we talked about today. Okay, so here I am at the Twitter thread I was talking about that went viral on Twitter. As you can see, like 1.9 million views, 45k likes, 12k favorites. I favorited this one because I mean it's just too good. You gotta have this in the bookmarks. Anyways, so some of these are going to be hard to analyze because, as you can see, they are very fast. So it's hard to analyze technique when it's so fast. Also, ignore my PNG tuber. Sometimes I stream, not that often though. Don't count on it. In the Twitch chat overlay, you'll just have to deal with that. I'm sorry. This one I thought was maybe had some ghosting in it, from what I could tell. Right here, and it's live footage. I'm pretty sure it's not sped up, so it's great. So here she's just drawing lines, basic stuff. But there, you can see it right there. She does like a little hover movement to figure out like how do I like how this feels, you know, before actually putting pen to paper, which helps her a lot. That's ghosting, not the traditional method. I'm assuming because she's drawn for such a long time, she needs to do it less and feels the requirement to play it safe less, so she just goes for it a lot more. But sometimes there are pretty heavy examples. Like there, you saw that? Yeah, there. She moves over here, she does one little stroke to see how it feels, and then she starts drawing. And look at how good she is at doing these segmented lines. It's the same stroke of the wrist and the fingers, but she's getting 2 lines on there because she's so comfortable pulling up and putting down in the same position, which is exactly what you do for ghosting. Sorry. Which is exactly what you do for ghosting. You do practice strokes right over the paper, and only when you decide, the only thing you change is you just press the pen down instead of hovering over it. She's really good at pressing the pen up and down while hovering right above the paper. See, there's another example. She gets the motion ready, and then she puts the pen down when it's needed. The less new you are to the technique, the more you're going to have to do the ghosting motion over and over and over again to make sure you got it right. But because she's so experienced, she only has to do it once. Sometimes not at all if she's really in her groove. But yeah, I mean, this is great stuff. Also, I want to note, with the G Pen specifically, you can't really do against the grain of the pen motions like you can with a fine liner or a ballpoint pen, because the pointy nib catches on the paper and will tear it. So you're only going to see her do side to side or down, never up. There's another example. She goes here, does a bunch of little lines, like how does this feel? Does this feel right? Let me set my rhythm here. And then she goes for it and gets it all right. It's great. This, she has her wrist to the paper, like the wrist is touching the paper here, but she's more gliding the forearm across, even though the wrist is touching. So she's moving from her elbow, maybe some of her shoulder, but for the most part, she's just gliding her forearm across the paper to make sure she gets these longer, clean lines. And here you saw it a little bit with this little wiggle right there. That's her ghosting out the start of the motion. I don't see her do the full line as much. She mostly just does it to get started on the line, but it's still very useful either way. And this wobbliness, I believe, is because the grain of the paper, she was going a little bit against it. If you look at her pen, she's going this way and the pen is pointing that way just a little bit. So that might be why the line got a little messed up, even though she did it really straight. Like, you can try this yourself on a mouse pad, or you don't need any surface. You can just try this yourself. Like, try moving just in the arc of your wrist and seeing when you reach the end of motion and when you start to overextend it. Like, that's a good feeling for how much you can move. This is just very solid line work. You can see a little bit here and there. For the most part, it's just these tiny movements, but pay attention to how constantly adjusting the paper, constantly adjusting her hand. None of this is like conscious. She's done this so much to the point where she doesn't even have to think about it. But for artists like us who haven't spent thousands of hours drawing, like, it's important to pay attention to that, to really set yourself up for each line. And then later it will become autonomous. You know what I'm saying? There you saw it a little bit. All this wiggling around on above the paper. Just trying to get a feel for the motion. Like, does this feel right once again before committing to the lines? I see a lot of artists, they either get so stiff. Ghosting also helps you loosen up a lot. But they get so stiff and they go so slow. It's super wobbly. It's following the right path, but the line isn't clean. Or they're not able to finish lines at all. They just do a little inch by inch, which, you know, technically isn't wrong. I have a whole video about how that isn't wrong, but having the ability to do both is very important, because certain aesthetics are more conclusive to certain techniques. So the fact that she can do this without much continuing the line little by little is part of what makes her art look like this. But other art styles, it would be very hard to get that effect while moving your pen like this. It would be very hard to get a different art style that's more rough while moving your pen like this. You have to change the way you draw for different aesthetics. But yeah, that basically goes over my review of the footage. I tried to look on the internet for raw footage that was slower so I could analyze it better, but it was really hard to find, and I could only find very short clips, or the clips you saw in this video, in this thread. So I apologize for that. If you know where I can find any long footage of her just drawing live without speed up, that would be really awesome. So yeah, send that over my way if you can find that. Thank you.